I'm John Wilker, the organizer of 360 IDEP. I hope you enjoy this session recording, but first I wanted to mention one thing. We've served the community since 2009, and over the past few years we've had to take on debt in an effort to keep the conference alive. After several unforeseen challenges, not the least of which is a pandemic of indefinite duration, we've had to make the hard choice to end the conference as we're now facing over $100,000 in debt. As a result of requests from the community of how they can help, we've created a GoFundMe campaign. If you're inclined and able, please consider donating to help keep 360 IDEP going. The QR code after this will link you to the campaign. Thank you. Enjoy the recording.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining this room, and not that room, although that does look like a really good talk, but thanks for joining my talk. So my name is Adam Rush, I am from the UK, you might have noticed, and it's so awesome to be here. Like I've been doing iOS development for like 12 years, worked all over the world, it's taken me to some cool places. But I've always remembered 360 IDEV. Like this conference has just been around since forever. I mean, these banners on the wall are super cool. And I've always wanted to speak here, I've always wanted to attend here, but I've never had the opportunity until now. So this is, yeah, it's a really cool moment. So this talk is about MetricKit. It's something I'm quite passionate about. It's something I've explored quite a lot, and hopefully I can share some of that insight with you today. By the way, if I look super tired, it's because my timing is all over. Like 7 hours difference. I'm waking up at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., so my body clock's all over. So if I have sleeping bags, it's either I'm tired from the traveling or it's my kids. So it's one of the two. So, MetricKit. So basically, we're going to look at, I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of the App Store. And this kind of makes sense because of this conference, because I feel like this conference kind of reminisces on the past, and it falls quite nicely from Justin's talk. So I'm going to give you the whistle-stop tour there. What is MetricKit? And you're probably already using it. Like I'm just going to put that out there. I reckon everyone's using MetricKit. Not everyone, but a lot of you are using MetricKit without realizing. We're going to look at monitoring your app using MetricKit and how you can do that. We're going to look at the integration of MetricKit, like how to deal with the APIs, how you can visualize some of this data. And then finally, how you can use the data. So we're going to touch on this ever so slightly. We're not going to go into too much detail because I've only got 45 minutes. That's like part 2 of MetricKit, of how you can like really start using the data and improve your performance. Before I do that, I've got a short video. The sound works, which I'm just super happy about. It's very cheesy, like extremely cheesy. But I think a lot of you are going to remember this video, or at least this app that's on this video. So, hope you like it. Yeah, I mean, that was a real video promoting a real app. Who remembers iBeer? Yeah, of course. So there is a reason why I've put that video on there. Actually, this is a super interesting app. This was making $20,000 per day in 2008, 2009. $20,000. It was produced by a guy called Steve. I don't know if you've read the story. It's a super fascinating story. I'll share the link. A guy called Steve. He was a failed magician. Those are his words and not mine. And the original version of that app was actually a video that he published on YouTube, and Apple was like, this is really cool. We want this on the App Store. Let's show you how you can build it. He built it, and yeah, he made a lot of money. And he's got loads of apps like iMilk and all of this stuff. But yeah, super cool. So there's a reason for this video. And it's all about looking at the history of the App Store and what the apps look like in 2008, 2009. So when we look at the apps in those days, they were either very gimmicky like that, just showing either video or displaying a small animation, or they were just aggregating data from an API and displaying it. They were very, very simple, very lightweight. And when you look at those apps, I think what everyone was thinking at that time was, I've just built an app and I'm going to ship it, and that's an achievement, job done. Like, it was just, can you put it together and can you get it deployed? That was it. So that means data consumption was relatively low, so it wasn't consuming huge amounts of data, and also competition was low, and also speed to market was low. So it was very much just get something built, get it shipped. And to put that in perspective, we had 100K apps in 2009. It sounds like a big number, but actually what we saw was, the big bang of apps. This was the evolution. This was the moment where everyone was jumping on this truck, and everyone wants to ship an app. So then we start looking into the future of the App Store and the apps. And let's be honest, I think we could all agree in this room that, in the last decade, it's just been an explosion of apps on the App Store. It's really boomed. In fact, almost 4 million apps are now available in 2021. It's probably even more. And this is just iOS. This is not even accounting specific iPad apps or Mac. So really, apps have become, key strategic products for companies all over the world. And this screenshot is of Emirates, which I had the great opportunity to work on. We had 6 iOS teams just on this one app, and each team had 4 or 5 engineers. So it just shows you the scale of companies now that we're operating on. The amount of code the app has is insane. I'm sure it was more than 1 million. Absolutely insane. You can book an entire flight. You can check in. You can get your boarding pass. The whole part of that is included in that app. It's significant. So it all falls to this one question of, how is your app performing? And it becomes a really significant question when your app has lots and lots of users, because all of those users are using various network conditions. They've got various pieces of hardware. So for me, it always comes back down to this question of, how is your app performing? So you're probably doing a few of these things already. So you're probably monitoring the backend services, APIs, using Grafana or any of the web monitoring tools. You've probably integrated a third-party library. I remember in those days, it was very easy to just drop Crashlytics in and you'd start getting data. Probably didn't use a huge amount of it, but we were monitoring the app. And then finally, it was probably doing pre-release metrics. So this is things like using Xcode to debug memory usage during the development lifecycle. So using the pane in Xcode directly to see how much memory and CPU and all this stuff. Maybe you are already doing this. Maybe you're not doing any of this. But you're probably doing some of it. And this falls into the development lifecycle, right? So we start by using Xcode. Or maybe some of you are using another IDE, I don't know. But you're probably using Xcode. And with Xcode, like I said, you're using the pane to do the development of the app. So you're doing it as you're building new features. You're monitoring crashes, you're monitoring memory usage, and all of this kind of stuff. And then we get to beta testing. So we might deploy it on TestFlight. We might deploy it on all of the other platforms where you can deploy beta apps. And you're probably collecting crash reports through TestFlight or through all the others. So really, we've got ways of monitoring app performance during both of these cycles. But my problem is, what do we do when we've shipped it? Because we're creating this single bundle, we're putting it on the App Store, everybody downloads it. I think everything's fine. It works, or it worked for me. So really, this is what we're focusing on. And this is where MetricKit comes in. So MetricKit fills the gap of the App Store deployment for monitoring metrics. It was, just bear with me. So it falls back to this question of, what about your app performance in live? So what are we doing to monitor app performance? And you're going to start having these questions like, what if users are experiencing network issues? How much cellular data are we consuming? How much battery is your app consuming? How is your location checking affecting performance? And they don't sound like big problems, but when you've got 1 million lines of code and you're shipping to 12 million customers or however many users, it becomes a big problem. If I show you this picture, does it mean anything? No? So this was WWDC 2019. It brings back a lot of memories for me because I was there. I was very lucky to be there. It was the first time I'd managed to get there. And it was super awesome. Like super, lots of memories. It turned out to be probably one of the biggest WWDCs, maybe you would agree, in 2019. We played about on some scooters. That's a picture of Scott there. We got some stickers with SwiftUI. And also there's a picture of my luggage because it got stuck in Nevada. So I had no clothes for a whole week, which was the whole week of DubDub. So that was fun. But this WWDC is where MetricKit was announced. So this brings back a lot of memories. It was also the same time as SwiftUI. It was a huge WWDC. And MetricKit wasn't actually announced in any of the keynote. Wasn't even on the big screenshot on this slide. Wasn't even mentioned. And I love this because I love digging into things that people don't know about. Everyone was jumping on SwiftUI, I was jumping on MetricKit. Boring. So, introducing MetricKit. Now, before I dig into some of this, just very quick exercise. If you put your hand up if you've heard of MetricKit. Okay? Put your hand up if you've used MetricKit. Okay. I'm going to put something on the line here. I reckon by the end of this, more of you are actually using MetricKit. So, MetricKit. So it's Apple's library to monitor app performance in production. So that's the key here. This is for, you've deployed the app, you're monitoring metrics. It's built in Swift, it's introduced in 2019. And it's a way to pull out key metrics on app usage after release. You can consume the JSON payload and render the data in your own services and analyze usage and make improvements. So we're going to get a little bit more deeper into some of the code. So there's two parts to MetricKit. The second part that I go through is what I think most of you are using already. The first part is this. So in terms of code, and I'm going to do a short demo as well to show you a bit of this in action. That is it. Actually, I'm missing one part, which is to import the framework. So you would import MetricKit. You access the singleton, and you assign that class as to conform to and subscribe to the delegate. So that is it. Yeah, I was supposed to click those as I was speaking, but nobody saw that. So once you've done that, you conform to the delegate, which is did receive, with payloads. And this payload is an array of MXMetricPayload. You're probably wondering why it's an array of payloads. So how this works is your users are using the app. Every time they use the app, Apple is recording metrics, okay? So if they use it 6, 7, 8 times per day, it'll record those metrics per that usage. And then after 24 hours, Apple will create an MXMetricPayload for the previous 24 hours. The reason you get an array is because you could get multiple 24 hours, right? Because they might not open the app since you use the app. So they might open it 3 days later. So it could be multiple 24-hour periods. It's an object that encapsulates the daily metric report. And the metric payload itself is split into 2 groups. You've got app performance and battery usage. There is also some metadata like app version, build number, and all this kind of stuff, but we're focusing on battery usage and app performance. So when we actually look at the MXMetricPayload and we're looking at the battery metrics, what happens is Apple cleverly organizes the metrics based on certain parts of logic, shall we call it. So if you've got some networking code, they will organize metrics around that networking code. It also covers things like camera usage. So if you've got some code taking a picture, it will analyze how much data that consumed or how much battery it used during that process. You've got media, so playing videos or music. You've got location, which is probably one of the ones that kind of jumps out to me. We've got Bluetooth, processing, and display. There is more, they're not as significant, and they're adding more all the time. But yeah, essentially, if your app is doing any of this, then it will log it into metrics based on battery usage. So if we just step into location, for example, things like how much time is spent using location services is a really key question. We're looking at identifying cases where location is left on, which is common. Excuse me. And then we're looking at validating the accuracy of location checking as well. So these are all the kind of questions you can pull out of this one section of battery usage, okay? We then have the performance, so app performance. The segment here is hangs. So how much time is your app unresponsive? We've got disk. One that I really like is application launch. I once worked for a big company in the UK called Sky, a big broadcasting company. And we actually wrote code to log when the app had launched through the app delegate, start a timer until we rendered the first UI on the screen, so almost like we painted the website kind of thing, and then we'd stop the timer. That timer we'd log. And then we'd go, yeah, on average, our app loads, 4.5 seconds. Now we don't need to do that. Apple is doing that for us. And then finally, we've also got memory. Again, another significant one here around, how are we using memory? So if we just step into hangs, identify when it's unresponsive, so moving off the main thread where possible. So if you're launching the app and, calling all kinds of stuff on the main thread and it's locked up and you can't scroll or whatever it is, Apple will let you know you've got an issue. Something here is unresponsive. And then, yeah, my favorite in this section, app launch. So looking at how long it takes for the app to launch. It also differentiates between a cold start and a warm start. So we also log this as well. So whether the app was already in the background and you're coming back would be a warm start. Whether the app's being terminated and killed, it would be a cold start. Both are quite significant differences because usually the app process for either of those is different in terms of the setup. And also understand what is slowing your app down on first launch. I'm talking things like, permission checking, not having a really good onboarding and that kind of thing. So what happens is, So what happens then is we are getting all of the built-in metrics. Sorry, I jumped back. And the number one question I had was, how do we tie that in with custom metrics? Because that's important, right? I mean, everyone's app and product is very different. All of that stuff might not be relevant, but how do we tie it in with some of our custom stuff? So what it allows you to do is use MX Signpost, which is part of MetricKit, and you can essentially log an event, or you can log when something has started. So here we've got, some code that's going to purchase some fruits, because that's just a sample app I created. And then we're going to log, hey, this process has started. So we've got an enum value of begin. We do some code, we do some logic, maybe some network calling, and then we finish by calling end. So we're telling, hey, this process is finished. Okay, we can stop logging this. We have the log, so fruits log handle. This is basically a bucket. So it's like a bucket of, basically, so you can section it out into different buckets. And then we've got a name. So I've called this checkout. So what happens is, when you get an MXMetricPayload, you can either interrogate individual pieces of information within that payload. It's just a struct. You can access all of the various information. Or you can access either the JSON representation of the entire payload or a dictionary representation of the entire payload. And this is just a small section of that data. So you can see here that I've got, so this is about using cellular, which is super cool. And it's basic histogram. So we've got 3 buckets, 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, and then it gives you a value for each of those. And this is like spread across all of the different, app performance, networking, and all that kind of stuff. So this is like a typical what it looks like a sample of the data. Then finally, we have something called MXDiagnosticPayload. It's a separate delegate, exactly the same. You get an array of, and this is, so what happens is Apple detects when something's wrong. So say, for example, you're using location checking in the background, you've got it switched to always on, it shouldn't be. What it'll do is it generates reports, and you can actually access those reports in the delegate and then upload somewhere, or you can save them to disk, or however you want it. So if you were just super interested in crashes, you can get all of the reports through this delegate that relate to the payload, and then upload them or do whatever you want with them. This talk doesn't really cover too much of this, and I'll explain a little bit later. So, I think a lot of you are already using MetricKit. So I've put everything on the line here. So if I was to show you this screen, who's using it? Oh. I think you might be, once I show you the demo of this. So this is in Organizer. Are you familiar? So this is when you do an archive, your Organizer opens up, and then you distribute the app. You also may be using it for crashes. So it will sync your crash reports from developer.apple.com. You can view crash reports. That's super cool because you can then link it back to the actual code with an Xcode. They've now added MetricKit in Organizer. So you could actually just start using MetricKit now with a few caveats by just using Organizer. But this is a real kind of overview that they've provided. It's not very specific. It's kind of like, you've done all of these releases. Here is the trend, okay? So yeah, it's good, it's nice, but it's not as specific as digging into individual details. So you can see I work for Circuit. You can see, yeah, we're doing all right in battery usage. Maybe, could be improved. But what we're looking for here is, drastic spikes or If we see a significant drop, that's probably already also a concern in terms of like what's different, what's happened. So we're going to dive into a demo. This is just me on MacBook, so it could go wrong. I've got like a ton of cables because Apple love adapters. So what could go wrong? So I'm just going to switch to, if you just give me a moment to put mirror on. Okay. This way. Okay. Just let it do its thing. So, give it a moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is jump to Organizer. I'm not sure if I can make this version bigger, unfortunately. But what I'm going to show you is mainly quite visual. So you're opening Organizer. In the top left is a list of your apps. Here. I'm going to demo using my own app, a VStack, but sadly I've not got enough users because what Apple does is they provide only enough data for a significant amount. So if you've got 1,000 users, you're probably not going to get much data. You can still get the delegate and get into the metrics that way, but in terms of Organizer, you've got to have a significant amount of data coming through. So I'm using Circuit, which is an app I work for. We've got battery usage. We've also got disk writes. So how many writes we're making to disk. And the biggest one I wanted to show you, which I am a fan of, is the launch time. So you can see we've increased a little bit. We had a spike in the middle there, and then we managed to drop that down. But this is a really fast way to sort of dig into these high-level bits of data and see if there's a problem. And what happens is, if there is a problem, you've got these reports here on the left. I remember the whole MXDiagnosticPayload I mentioned. This is them. So what it's doing now is it's downloading the crash reports. But this one is super cool. So this is when the app is consuming too much energy. It will also give you the stack trace. You also get the stack trace within the delegate, within the code, so you can actually pull that out and use it. And then from that point, you've spotted a problem, you can open in Xcode. I'm not going to do that because my Mac is probably just going to die. But what it does is it'll actually recreate that stack trace in Xcode. You can start debugging and see what the issues are. Organizer is a really, really fast way to just start using MetricKit. So I've got a very simple shopping trolley app, which I am going to deploy on my iPhone, hopefully. And basically the same code as we had. We've initialized Metric Manager. We've added ourselves as a subscriber. I've also added a signpost to say we're loading this particular view controller, because that could be useful. Hopefully, has it run? It has run. By, I don't know how. So it is running. And then down at the bottom here, we've got that code here, which I mentioned. So we're going to track the checkout process. And then finally at the bottom here, we've got those delegates. So we've got did receive metric payload, did receive diagnostic payload. And all I'm doing is just printing the object there. What we've got in these is, this is Xcode autocomplete. Not enjoying that. There we go. It's thought about it. So we get the JSON representation object, super useful. or we can get the dictionary representation. I'm just going to do that. So let's just recompile that. And then you're probably thinking, what do I do now? I just ship it. There's an option in debug, simulate MXMetricKit payload. So that will trigger your delegate. It's sample data. It'll be the same data every time, but it's got everything in it. So it shows you what the key names are and all this kind of stuff. So that you can see in here all of the payload like that. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff in there. Disk I/O. You also get the app version, cellular conditions we've mentioned. Here they even give you the test signpost. So this would be your custom metric to see how that would come through. Some more categories there. Application exit metrics. So how many times have they exited the app and all this kind of stuff. There's like tons of information in this payload. You kind of really just need to go away and look at the payload and start seeing what's available, because not all of it will be relevant. And with that data, you can either pull out parts of it and use it. You could save the whole payload to disk and maybe only consume it when you need it, or you could upload it to an API. So what I actually did was, I'll just get rid of this, is you could create a small Vapor app. You know, if depending on which company you work for and all of this stuff, you know, data, and if you're just a small app, maybe you could do this, but very, very simple. All it's doing is, I'm only interested in bundle identifier and OS version. So I created a small API that you literally can push up to wherever you want to host it, and then it's just going to render it as a dashboard with some data. Of course, this isn't, you know, this isn't real life. You would grab all of the data, store it in a database, and then render some graphs. But this was just me showing you could do this. So yeah, you could consume the data yourself. Yeah, so that's the demo on that. I'm just going to switch back to stop mirroring. Okay, so in Organizer, that's what you can access. And I've already mentioned a few of these things. This is what you can do now from today. You could also pull out some of the metrics and send it to another provider. So if you're using Sentry or Firebase or anything like that, you could just pull out some of the metrics you care about and upload it to their analytics as well. I'm really surprised there's not a company out there that will just consume all of this data, because there's a lot more in this data than you currently get with all the providers. Because a lot of people say to me, oh, well, why would I use this? I'm using Sentry. Yeah, but you're not getting as much data as this. And this is from Apple. You've got total access to all of the hardware and what's going on. So I definitely trust this. So getting up to close to wrap up, this is the process I would expect. So we're gathering data. We're determining like the most important areas, whether it's battery or scrolling or loading time. We're going to profile the app, and we're going to make a change, and we keep going with that. There is a super, super, super cool article, tutorial that Apple provided during WWDC 19. And what they show you is how to improve certain parts of what I've described. So it goes even further. It's like, right, now you've got the data, how do I do this? How do I make these improvements? I don't have enough time to go over that. But those tutorials do. It's very cool. So I don't know if we've got time for questions. I just want to say thank you for having me. Hopefully there's some useful things in there. I'm on Twitter. I kind of wang on about random stuff, so if you want to follow me, that's fine. You might also visit my website, swiftlyrush.com. I blog about MetricKit. There's a few tutorials on my website. And also, I host a conference back in the UK called SwiftLeads. Maybe you've heard of this. And also, I launched a SwiftUI app to learn SwiftUI called VStack. I've also got stickers. So if you like stickers, come and see me. But yeah, thank you very much.
We've got 5 minutes.
Okay, excellent. Happy for any questions. Thank you.
SwiftUI.
Hmm?
You just showed delegates, which you kind of, is there like a combined pipeline or some ways you can get the same data?
I'll be honest, I've not done this with SwiftUI. I believe you can. But yeah, I'll be completely honest with you, I've not. But yeah, I believe you can. I'm sure we can like spend an hour to dig into that after. Thank you.
So you mentioned like set it off seg or something like that. I would assume Android has something similar, so that way you can pair the data with Android.
Oh, that's a good question. I assume so. Because it's all very standard analytics, metrics. Looking at things like cellular condition, hang rates, and this kind of stuff. It's quite standard across the two. I've not looked at that, but I assume there is a lot of crossover that you could probably use on both.
Do you know if there's like a Slack integration with it or anything like that?
Slack.
Yeah, like a way to be like, hey, you crashed, and you're not using crash logs, you're using this instead.
Well, I mean, there definitely isn't through Apple's APIs. I know that for sure. If you could somehow create a hook into, I mean, you've got access to the delegate, so you're going to consume the data. Granted, it's 24 hours, so it's not going to be immediate. But once you've got that data, you can do anything with it. You could ping your own API, which would then go onto Slack or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'm just surprised there's not a company out there that's going, hey, just send us your MXMetricPayload payload. We'll do everything else. But maybe that's a business idea. Maybe we could, this time next year, we could be millionaires. Any more questions? I might. Sorry, I can't hear from. Overhead regarding performance for using it? No. No, I've not seen any overhead in performance. It's really, what Apple does is everything's in the background, in their control. You don't know when that delegate's going to get called. So they will find the perfect moment to call it, which is why you get an array of payloads, because you might get 3 days worth of data. So no, I've not seen any impact on that. Thank you.
Another question. Whenever you start a new Mac or new Apple device, they generally ask you that you want to share analytics with developers. That's really good.
Yeah, I forgot to. That was in my head for the scripts, like my virtual scripts. Really, really good point. So yeah, all of this is a caveat to when you set up your device and it goes, hey, would you like to share data with developers? I don't know how many people say yes or no. I'm not sure. Who would say yes? Okay, maybe about half. So yeah, if you hit no, you won't be included in that MetricKit data. So if you hit yes, you'll be included, which is why you only, in Organizer, you only get it if there's like a significant amount of users, because yeah, I mean, there's only maybe 50% of them saying yes. So yeah, it is a huge caveat, but I think enough people say yes to get a decent, bit of data. But Apple make a big deal about privacy, of course. So it's all anonymized. There's no, you do get what device it is and what OS version it is, but there's no like identifier or UUID or that kind of thing. It's all anonymous.